Well, it's 5 after, so good afternoon. I'm Kim Curtis with the Grandview Chamber, and we're glad you could join us today for our conversation about unconscious bias and also funding our school's future. I'd like to introduce our chairman of the board, Patty Carbaugh, who's in charge of commercial banking at Commerce Bank, to introduce our two keynotes today. Patty?
Hi, and welcome everybody to the Luncheon today. I want to introduce Dr. Kenny Rodriguez. He has served as superintendent of the Grandview C4 School District since July 2016. Before serving as superintendent, Dr. Rodriguez served for 2 years as the assistant superintendent of curriculum and instruction in the Grandview C4 School District. Under his leadership these past 5 years, the district has made great strides in student achievement and curriculum development, along with significant facility improvements. Dr. Kenny joins us today to discuss funding our school's future, which features questions 1 and 2 for the district on the April 6th ballot. Dr. Kenny, welcome.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I'm certainly very excited to be here today and to talk to you guys a little bit. I will try not to spend too much time on this. I certainly want to hear a lot from our speaker today and give him plenty of opportunity to do that. I wanted the opportunity to be able to talk to several and just try to provide as much information as I possibly can. I've done this a few different times with a few different settings, and I just like to kind of walk you through what's going on in our school district, but in particular what we have on the ballot coming up on the election in a few weeks, 2 weeks from, I guess, this last Tuesday. So what I'll do is I'll just kind of go through a couple quick things just so you kind of get an idea of what we're talking about in our school district. So we have 2 items that are going to be on the ballot. We have question 1 and question 2. Question 1 will be a 60-cent tax levy increase, and question 2 is going to be a $45 million bond. So I'm going to take those both separately, and I'm actually going to do the second one first. Anytime that we're talking about a bond issue, those seem to be more common, especially for our school district. So people tend to know what those things mean. And basically, it's a lot about our facilities and what we can do and what the things that we want to see for our school district. This one being a little bit different in that it's $45 million. Our school district has never done one that large before, so I'm really excited at what is possible. You see on the screen right now just the 6 different areas that we kind of break the funding down by. And so very common things on there that you've seen already in our school district. And seen some of the things that we've been able to do already, but I'll kind of break those down, kind of talk about a few of those, maybe more high profile projects that we're going to be looking at doing, and then we'll kind of move on to the levy. You can see here, again, we're talking about a variety of different things. I mean, roof and HVAC, we'll kind of leave to the side. Our buildings are built in the late 50s and early 60s. And so anytime that you have older homes, you know that you're going to be dealing with roofs, you're going to be dealing with issues with HVAC. And so we're constantly trying to upgrade those particular pieces. And certainly we have a variety of things that we need to continue to do. In extra and co-curricular enhancements, really, really excited about a lot of the things. This last bond, we certainly did a lot of things at our high school, and you saw our new home stands and our video scoreboard. We were extremely excited to be able to do that. Our community has been very supportive in seeing what we're able to do. Now it's time to complete that project and really do the other visitor side. I know I get questions all the time of why in the world would you want to spend money on the visitor side, because we don't always care about what happens with our visitors. What I would say to that is the whole point of that revitalization of our high school stadium there was so that we could host events. When we were talking with the initial group and the initial team, we were looking at how many seats do we need so we can host band events, so we can host track meets. We want to be able to have those kind of events here. We know that a lot of times we go to other school districts for that, and we should be able to do those things here. So you look at, weight room remodel, resurfacing our track, which again, when you have a winning track like track team like what we've had, we want to make sure that we can continue to take care of those facilities. But also at our middle school. We want to make sure that our Grandview Middle School football facility continues to get upgraded, because that's where our students go. From Martin City, they go to our Grandview Middle School, and so it impacts a lot of students whenever we do those kinds of upgrades. When you look at safety and security, we constantly have had a focus on this in our school district. Certainly in the last 5 years since I've been superintendent, kind of taking it to the next level. We want to make sure that all of our staff and students and community members know that our buildings are safe. That looks a lot differently to a lot of different people. So there's a lot of different types of projects on this list. Certainly when you're looking at windows and a variety of different things like that, but camera systems. We upgraded our camera system at our high school on our last bond. We did a lot of press on it because we were very pleased with that project. We wanted to make sure that our students and community members knew about that. So now it's time to upgrade that same system at all of our facilities to make sure that they have access to the same information. You look at, Care Gym, Grandview Assistance Program right there on Main Street. Some of you may not know that the school district actually owns that building that the Grandview Assistance Program currently resides in. We've done some upgrades to the outside. You've seen the in front there, we've done a variety of different things, but inside still needs some remodels, and we want to make sure we provide them an opportunity to have a much better facility to work out of, knowing the amazing things that they're able to do for our community. Building and branding signage. Though all of you on this call have gone to schools and different districts and have been into different places, and we are surrounded by a lot of different school districts that when you go into that school district, you go into a school, you know what school you're in. You know what it looks like. You kind of get a certain feeling when you go into them. We want to make sure that we have that same type of experience at all of our schools. And many of them look very different. So we want to try to start tying them together so that when you pull up, this is one of the Grandview schools. When you look at classroom and restroom enhancements, I've said this on a lot of different calls. The main component that I like to talk about is, I'm gonna go back to that, is on the restroom enhancements. My son, being a student in the district, has even had conversations with me about restrooms and needing to be upgraded at a variety of different places. And, hey, Dad, you've got to do something about these restrooms. So we've been able to upgrade a variety of different ones. And I get more comments from kids than almost any project that we do in the district whenever we upgrade restrooms. So we know we want to continue to do that. And we want our kids to have those positive experiences whenever they're at our schools. You look at, fine arts areas, renovations. You look at revitalizing our cafeteria at our high school. The basement in the high school has a lot to do with our pathway models and what we're doing moving forward with our woods and metals classes. That entire floor is going to undergo a remodel as well, so that we can serve more students, but also get more equipment and things that we know that our students are going to need as they move forward with that project. You see a variety of other things on there. I'm going to point out playgrounds. One of our biggest concerns right now is that all of our students don't have the same experience no matter what school that they go to. Many times their experience depends upon what school they're at. Playgrounds is a perfect example of that. You may go to one school and have a really fantastic playground. Another school may not have near the items on there. And I want all of our students to have that opportunity. We prioritize play in this district and certainly know that it is vital to their education. So we're going to be upgrading all of our playgrounds at every single one of our schools. I saw in the news just today, Shawnee Mission's doing something very similar to this with the bond issue that they had passed in January. I'm very excited about this project and being able to ensure that all of our students have a consistent experience at all of our schools. So that kind of takes care of the bond side. Again, a lot of projects, and you can spend $45 million in a heartbeat at any of our schools, and you try to upgrade things. It really goes quickly, but some really cool stuff. The last piece that I will say on our bond is we also have an addition going in at our Martin City School. It's going to relieve some pressure in terms of some of our classroom space, but also provide a much needed second gym that they've never had. That's our K-8 building on the Martin City side. It absolutely needs to have that addition. So a new gym with some fine arts classrooms and some other things that'll relieve some of that pressure. That's going to be one of the larger projects that we have with this bond. As we move over to the levy side, certainly a little bit difference here. this one is a tax increase. So number one, we don't take those things lightly. Anytime that we're going to ask for more money, we certainly want to make sure that that we've done our due diligence in looking at our finances and trying to make sure that what we're going for is going to help us move forward in the future. But again, anytime that we have 82% of our operating budget going towards salaries and benefits, that 20%, it's really hard to find additional cuts and things like that, especially when our budgets have been cut several times over the course of the last couple of years. So what does that really go towards? Well, clearly, like I said, a lot of it's going to be making sure that we can continue to be competitive. I want to hire the best and brightest. And to do that, we have to remain competitive in the Kansas City area. So this is going to help us do that. I'm really proud that our goal is to be in the top third of all the Kansas City metro schools, and we've been able to attain that. It's going to continue to be more and more difficult for us to do that in the future. And we want to make sure that our students have access to the absolute best staff members possible. We haven't gone out for a levy increase in 17 years. 2004 was the last levy increase. So again, I feel like that shows again that we've been good stewards of our money. We've done our absolute best, and we don't approach this lightly. We want to make sure that people have the information. I've been asked before, why 60 cents? How did you come up with that number? And again, it's about how much money that really provides for the school district over the course of the next years. And so we want to make sure that it puts the financial security of the district at the forefront, and it really helps push us forward there. But then also, truthfully, that we don't go out for too much. Like again, we don't take this lightly. We know that we're going to be asking for more money, that we don't want to go overboard, and knowing that in these kind of trying times, that we want to make sure that we are still trying to find that comfort spot. So what does that look like for you as an individual, possibly? If you're on this call and you're kind of looking at that, the average home in Grandview, and depending upon what you look at, could be anywhere between 150 and 190,000. So you see a couple indicators there in terms of that. You've got a current annual cost. That's what you're currently paying for your taxes. You see a middle column in terms of what that increased level is going to be, and then the difference on the far right. So again, a $190,000 home, you're going to be paying an extra $217 per year. Again, I don't take that for granted. It's $217 that is going to be an increase. So certainly we want to make sure that I don't undersell that, because $217 is still money to anybody, especially still coming out of the pandemic. But you can see a variety of different home prices on there. We just tried to give you a certain different examples of what that would look like. So again, I just wanted to provide a little bit of information, kind of go through what we're talking about and what's happening there. I'm happy to take additional questions and things, but I wanted to at least provide that info there. I do see one in the chat already. Curious what the percentage of the money from the tax increase on question 1 will go towards specifically teacher and support staff salaries. That's actually a very difficult thing for us to say specifically, but what I will say, it will continue to make us competitive. As I said before, our goal and what is publicly stated is for us to be in the top third in every category. And what that means specifically when we're talking with teachers is beginning teacher salary, a kind of middle career salary in terms of I've had some education and some years of experience, and then toward the end of your career as a veteran teacher. We want to make sure to be in the top third in that particular regard. In a couple of those categories, we've actually been in the top 3 in some years, and even in recent years. So we're very excited about that. But every year, different people increase and look at providing that for their staff, and so we want to make sure that we're able to continue moving that forward. So it's really difficult to say what specific percentage that's going to be, but again, 82% of our operating budget is staff salaries. So I am publicly saying that these are the things that we want to do to help continue to honor our staff. And so I know that I'll be held accountable for that, and want to make sure that that we're going to help push that forward. So we have a process that we use in our district that we work with our staff members. It's a very collaborative process to determine what is possible, what do we see, and what should we be offering for our staff to make sure that we are honoring them and the work that they're doing. Other questions?
Kim, you're on chat.
Yeah, you're on mute, Kim.
Thank you. We probably need to move on to our next presentation. So if you have any further questions for Kenny, let us know. Patty, if you want to go ahead and do the introductions while Dr. Gomsey shares his screen, and then Sharon's going to promote everybody to a panelist so they can interact and ask questions. And everybody should have gotten a copy of this form. If you didn't, shoot me a chat and I'll email it to you.
Perfect. Thank you, Kim. All right, so I would like to introduce Dr. Emmanuel Gumsey. He is president of All World Languages and Cultures, Inc., a training and consulting corporation specializing in intercultural communication, diversity, and inclusion, education, character education, team building facilitation, and language services, translations, interpreting, and instruction. Whew, that's a lot. Dr. Gumsey specializes in teaching about world cultures. He spent 10 years serving the United States Peace Corps in Africa as Chief Languages and Cross-Culture Coordinator. He was instrumental in designing training curricula for Peace Corps volunteers assigned to Francophone African countries. He also served as presenter at the Foreign Service Institute of the U.S. State Department. Currently, in addition to running his company, Dr. Gumsey serves as faculty and adjunct at numerous universities. To the exception of police academies and universities, he is the only standalone expert in the state of Missouri to be certified as legal provider of racial profiling to law enforcement agencies. He serves as instructor at the Kansas City Regional Police Academy. Dr. Gumsey is recipient of the National Foreign Language Fellowship Award from the National Endowment for the Humanities. This distinction allowed him to pursue research on games from around the world that are effective in the teaching and learning of cultures and languages. He is the creator of Yan Koloba, a community building group activity rooted in the traditional cultures of Africa. Dr. Gumsey's recently released book is titled Shocking Cultures, Hilarious and Disastrous Challenges of Foreign Workers in the USA. He is active in numerous cultural, foreign languages, educational, and professional training associations, and has served as keynote speaker and presenter at various local, national, and international conferences. Dr. Gumsey was selected as the 2011 Outstanding Citizen of the Year for the city of Lee Summit, Missouri, and is the recipient of the 2011 Missouri Municipal League Civic Leadership Award. And I am really looking forward to hearing what he has to say and to his presentation. Dr. Gumsey, the floor is all yours.
Thank you so much, and thank you everyone who is on the call today. Again, my name is Emmanuel Gumsey. The N is silent. Gumsey means the word of God. Emmanuel means what it means. And if you pronounce the N, you'll be cursing. So, and I will not want to hear that. Actually, you'll be cursing God, not me. Thank you for the introduction again. Well, like Dr. Rodriguez said, unconscious bias is a topic that has been going on, mostly recently in other organizations, and different people present it differently. What we're going to go through today is look at the agenda here, if you can see it. Okay. We will see how bias influence cultures, or bias and cultures are interrelated. But bias and perception of what we see and hear on a daily basis, the definitions of bias, other type of biases, in addition to explicit and implicit biases. So why are we addressing bias actually these days? How does neuroscience explain how bias influences interaction with other people? And we will look at the origin of biases. The main issue, the question that I always have is, how do you overcome your biases? Is it possible? Absolutely. How do we do it? And how do we stop implicit bias from having the negative consequences in your organization? At this level, I usually separate the leadership from the staff. So to start, I would like you to go through this short game. You have that form in front of you. I call, this is a form that I designed in 2005, and it's called the colors of bias. So if you have that form in front of you, I would like you to fill out only to part to number 4, really quickly. And this is how you got to fill out the form. As quickly as you can, fill out all the blanks. And most importantly, number 3, fill out the form the same way it is printed. Just about 3 minutes. So fill out quickly all the blanks and fill out the same way the form is printed. I am timing here. Okay, anyone has reached number 4 yet? I know everybody's mute, so this is one of the drawbacks of Zoom training. I love to see my people in the room. So my first question for those who are at least on number 4, my first question to you is, how did you feel? And you know, under the form there, under the tree, you have 2 sets of 3 lines. And on the left, I usually encourage people to write down a description of the form. How would they just describe that form? Just one word. And to the right, just write down your feelings. How did you feel completing this form? And here on, you know, on the description and the feelings, you can write any way you like. You don't need to write the way the form is printed. Let's just pick a few words here. So what are some of the descriptions of the form that you have? Anyone, you can unmute yourself unless there's a interference around you. You can unmute yourself and provide me with some answers. Descriptions. Anyone there?
Well, I've seen a couple comments in chat. We're going to be promoting people up so they can chat in person. But one person said frustrating, one person said difficult, and one person said it made them feel dumb.
Yeah, excellent. Okay. You know what? I agree with that. Uh, the chat room would be the better place to put those answers. Okay.
Oh, another comment says unfair.
Unfair. Okay. Yeah. So maybe one or two.
Any other
Okay.
comments?
Go ahead.
I don't think anybody else has put another comment out.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. So, and why is it that this form is so frustrating? Or why is it so difficult? And why is it dumb and unfair? Usually, people will state that, and I'm doing this so that we can go faster. People will say to me, well, it is because we are not used to writing the way the form is printed. We are not used to write from right to left. You know, I'm trying to avoid the word backwards that people use most often. And I'm asking them, so why is it that the form brings you so much uncomfort? The answer is because we are not used to writing this way, which means if we are not used to something, then the day we encounter that issue, that thing, that person, then we have some difficulties to relate to that individual or that situation or that thing, which brings us really to the issue of bias. Bias usually is built up throughout our lives. It is something that we uh, grew up and learned from our environment, and which is totally integrated into our subconscious. One thing that I would like to mention here, what did someone write? What did you write on birth? What's your answer to birth? You can look at the chat room. Let me see here. Anyone wrote something on birth?
I put my
Well,
birth date.
okay.
I also put my date of birth.
Yeah, exactly. And that is exactly what I have 99% of the people who use this form that they do. Now, my next question is birth equivalent or synonymous of birth date? The answer is no. But once you see birth, you understand directly that it's birth date because you're used, it is imprinted in your subconscious that birth has the connotation to birth date. And I want to take my example and many other cultures around the world, their example that they will also be biased with the word birth because they will see not birth date, but birthplace. They will also be missing the, the, the boat because birth is not birthplace. So the key issue here is that we are used by our culture and other things to see a variety of things totally differently, and we give different interpretation. And both of us are right. Uh, Very quickly on my background and on my story, in my culture here, uh, why will I write down birthplace? Because when I was born, one thing happened the day, a few minutes after I was born. A tree was planted. It was a small tree. Today that tree is tall, taller than I will ever be. And before they planted that tree, they collected my afterbirth and put it in the hole and planted a tree on it. From that day on, uh, it took the whole village to plant a tree. So like it takes a whole village in Africa to raise a child. Um, Many hands planted that tree. And from that day on, that tree became my tree. It's the most important thing that I have on earth. Culturally, it is more important to me than my house, my car, whatever you can think of that is of value. But that is what is in my culture. That tree prevents me or dictates me to do 9 things. The first one is wherever you go, treat every child like your own child. The second one is, and again, it's cultural. I cannot hit a woman, I cannot fight a woman because my tree will suffer. And I, the last one, number 9, I cannot be responsible of somebody's blood to drop. So I cannot commit a murder. My tree will suffer and people will see it right away. The most important thing about this tree that I went to the creek when I was a toddler, carried the tree to carry water, to water my tree during the dry season when trees will die. It is because the day that I stop breathing, I will be taken under my tree and be buried there. Actually, this is not my tree, okay? This is not the way we bury people in Africa. There's no such a beautiful, expensive tombstone. So just as an image, I will be buried under my tree so that I can reconnect again with my umbilical cord that was planted there more than 100 years ago today. So we look at things totally differently because the buildup of our biases. So some of the time, what is not provided are the details needed to process the information that we are given. I did not give you a lot of detail. I just said birth, and you wrote in your birth date. I saw birth, and a lot of people like me will write in their birthplace. We call that similarity bias. Why? Because when we do not see or hear what should be and what the information is not provided, in cultures, when you see people act, there's no way for you to tell they are acting like this because of that reason. In cultures, details are not provided. So I want to share with you a few case studies here so that we can see how perception and bias go together. What comes to your mind when you see a very tall person? Well, because of inability to respond here, but the response that I usually have is, tall person in the US, we think about basketball. Okay. We know you're tall, and did you play basketball? Actually, I remember I was coming one day from Portland, Oregon, after spending 4 days with training with Nike, the shoe people. There was a real tall guy in front of me, and we were online at the airport, and I took a few seconds to ask him, "Hey, sir, did you play basketball?" He turned around, he said, "What? Why do you say did you? I still shoot the ball." So what was my two biases right there is that I use the past tense. Did you play basketball? Because he looked a little older, that he may not be playing anymore. The second was that he was tall. Therefore, my assumption was he played basketball. You see how we can be easily transformed by the perception. But in the place where I grew up in Cameroon, in Banga, well, when we see in the rainforest, you see a tall person, nobody will be thinking about basketball. They will be thinking, wow, this person can steal mangoes. Okay, so again, that is based totally on built up cultural perceptions in our culture. Okay, quick question here. What comes to your mind when people around you speak a language that you do not understand? Well, most of the time, the answer that I have is, I think they are hiding something. I think they are talking about me. Well, as somebody who has done that before, going to parent-teachers conferences in school with my children, with whom I only speak French, uh, I talk often in front of the teacher to my daughter in French. And it took me a fraction of a second to figure out that, wow, this teacher made me feel very, very uncomfortable, that thinking that I may be saying something, hiding something to him or her. So what is really bias? We have said, I have said the word bias a few times. Well, bias is the preference or inclination to make certain choices. That may be positive or maybe negative. And it becomes a bias because of the unfair actions that may result from that inclination. And conscious biases simply prejudice in favor for or in favor of or against one thing or one person or group of people or a situation, usually considered also to be unfair. Now, we were going to spend a lot of time on unconscious bias today. That results from the tendency to process information based on unconscious associations and feelings, even when these are contrary to one's conscious uh, declared beliefs or facts. So you may act unconsciously, even contrary to what you will do if you take a few minutes to think. And what we need to know about biases is that unconscious bias mostly is that it is equal opportunity. We all have it. No one is immune from unconscious bias. So don't be guilty. Don't feel guilty. Don't feel bad if somebody says, oh, you are biased, unless they are being biased themselves. And unconscious bias is rooted deeply in some more than in others. It impacts some of us, again, more than others, because it is deeper in some than in others. And some people cover it better than others. Some overcome their biases better than others. And even good people have biases. Again, we already said that having bias does not mean that you're a bad person. And we are able to overcome our biases. Some people think, well, if it is unconscious, how can we overcome it? Where there are strategies to overcome our unconscious biases. Just a few types of biases. Of bias. Similarity bias is simply bias by association. We mentioned that. Affinity bias, the tendency to warm up to people like ourselves. You know, if they look like me, if they think like me, if they speak like me, therefore, I need to defend them, you know, in many ways, in all the ways that I can. The halo effect bias is the tendency to think everything about a person is good because you like that person. I mean, parents and children, we would defend our children to death, sometimes wrongly because of that halo effect bias. Other type of bias, perception bias, the tendency to form assumptions about certain groups, thus making it impossible to make objective judgment about its member. And this is quite generalized. Confirmation bias is another one, which is the tendency for people to seek information that confirms what they already know, that confirms their pre-existing belief. So why are we addressing unconscious bias today? First, there's a few reasons for that. First, workplaces are increasingly becoming multicultural and in different ways. A few years ago, we were not talking about LGBTQ. Today, there is no way we can talk about the workplace without mentioning LGBTQ. Uh, so the workplace is changing. Number two, the need for bias and cultural literacy is important. If not, we will get into all kind of trouble because understanding uh, cultural and bias literacy serves ourselves. It protects our company from liability and creates a more harmonious working environment, more harmonious belonging, more inclusion, more acceptance in the organization. And just very quickly here, research has revealed that many Americans show positive implicit bias towards white people versus Black people. So the positive implicit bias towards young versus old people. Again, these are research from most Americans. Positive implicit bias towards fit people versus obese people, and also positive implicit bias towards straight versus gay. So showing a preference for or against any particular group does not mean that as a person you are prejudiced and will discriminate against those people. It only means that in your subconscious there are elements, there's some information that uh, prepare you to consider that these people are better than others. So, and one of the research that I really want to share here to support that is a research from 2017 from the Public Relations Research Institute, PRRI, research titled Research on Affinity with Minority Groups Among Whites. They determine, the result of the research determines that there is a conscious prejudice bias among 10% of US white population, which means there are 10% of white Americans who declare and show it by all means that they are biased towards Black people in general. I want to mention that this study was kind of limited. I would like to see the reverse, Black versus white. But yeah, 10% of white population clearly said, I am biased. They act like it. All the inventory shows that they are biased. You also have conscious bias-free near total fairness. That means 15% of US white population say, act, declare that they are not biased at all. And everything they do shows it that they are not biased. Then you have 75% of the US white population who have what the PRRI called unconscious cognitive bias. So they will say, I am not biased, but against Black people, but they will act, and all the inventory, all the research will show that they actually hold biases against Black people. There are 75% of that. So that's the vast majority. And so the unconscious bias is there that you are not aware of. When I say you, I don't mean you listening, but that I mean 75% are not of white Americans do not know that they are biased. They are biased. Um, so why address biases? Well, I want to share this example with you. This was here in Lee Summit where I serve on multiple boards. Kim knows that. Was a member of the board of the Chamber of Commerce. And this lady um, that some people may know, a business lady, we serve on the board of the chamber together and many other organizations. About 3 years that she has known me, she came and said, Emmanuel, listen, I am kind of embarrassed to tell you this, but you are the first Black man I am not afraid of. Okay. I said, wow, thank you for sharing that with me. And we had a conversation about it. And at some point before we separated, I asked her, what were you afraid of in a Black man? The answer she gave me was, I don't know. So she knew before she knew me enough to declare that she was not afraid of me, but she had been up to me afraid of Black men. That was the reason why uh, bias literacy is important. Non-conscious bias literacy is actually even imperative. So what does neuroscience tell us about unconscious bias? As you grew up, some of these are based on research from Harvard implicit association test. If this was a workshop for about an hour or two, I will ask you to take this test, which takes about 10 minutes, but there's a lot of debriefing that we need to do. So on the left side, you have those cognitive associations reinforced based on your past behavior, where you grew up, who you interacted with, your cultural background, etc. You know, that all those things are hidden right there in your subconscious mind. They do not act yet until one day you may have power, you may be in a position where you're in fear, and I can take multiple examples on each of these cases. You may be just ignorant of something, and depending on how deep that is bias information has been in you, on how deep it is ingrained in you, depending on time when you're tired or you're distressed, that information will pop up and impact makes you uh, act in a way that could be viewed as discrimination. So you provide on the outside a behavior toward what you're observing only because new information, that information has been in you, and something comes in and triggers that information to come out. Why is that? Because the mental shortcuts are essential to our survival and can be helpful. When you're in danger and see someone who is in danger, we do not need to stop and think about the situation. Instead, we can make quickly a quick judgment, or we can just run away. Fight or flight. Why? Because the cortex, and again, making it short, we can go a little deeper into this. We have about 11 million bits of information at any one time in our cortex or cerebrum, in our brain. But only about 50 bits of that information can come out in a second. So when we see situations, cultural situations, bias situation, we do not have the time to process and say, oh, I am going to act like this. We act as quickly as we can because that's the way our brain act. And the opinion that comes, or the facts that are supported by biases or clear. When you need to make a decision, you have two options, especially when you have power. Decision based on bias, that was simply based on your opinion, and decisions based on fact. Most of the time, we choose because biases manifest themselves in situation of crisis. Mental shortcuts are essential to what we believe and to our survival. When in danger, snap judgment, we fight or we flight. So with the combination of bias, stereotypes, and prejudices, we have determined, and research shows it, that bias is the fundamental thing in your subconscious mind. Then you can move from bias. If the bias develops to the level of stereotypes, you may be thinking negatively about people who are different. Then prejudices will be at a higher level than stereotypes. But these are all thoughts. If you stop at any of these levels, then you will be okay. But if you let your biases, stereotypes, and prejudices guide you towards an action taken based on those things, based on those prejudice thought or implicit bias, then you will be liable. And that's where discrimination starts, which is really an action based on action taken based on previous stages. What are the origin of our biases? Here they are, and even more. And what are the most dangerous things that can happen to somebody who has bias? If you have bias combined with fear, ignorance, and power, then you are more likely to move into discrimination. And how does that happen? Mostly um, overcoming our biases would be to address it with educators, police officers, physicians, prosecutors, etc. And also, this is where the leadership, bias for leadership training goes in. And there are strategies to overcome our biases. Running into time here. And how do we cover our biases so that we cannot get away from our biases, but we can overcome them, we can cover them so that they do not show up on the exterior. Do children have biases? Well, they do, but at a lower level. Biases increase with age, but kids are more inclined to trying to find out. They are curious. They want to know what is going on. And this is something that I would like you to reflect. We don't have the time to have this discussion on the setting. Anyone afraid of snakes? And what has snakes done to you? If you are, is it a situation where you can find yourself around snakes like this young lady here? Will you be comfortable? Even if you know that the snakes are not going to bite you. That is where I would like to end this conversation. I don't know if we have time for questions, but I am here if there are a few questions for me. Thank you.
I did have one question. about, would you be willing to share your PowerPoint with us, that I could share it with this group, or is that something specific to your business? We've got some
Both.
people that have boards and thought it would be great to share with, you know, some of their volunteers and boards.
I may send you the PowerPoint. I don't see a major problem with that.
Okay.
But you know, you say you were taping you were recording.
Yes.
This
Yes,
training,
we
right?
are also recording. Yes.
Okay. Well, then you have it.
Okay.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Are there any other questions? I know you've made me think about a lot of things today, and just thinking about things that I assume sometimes. And it all started with your backward form.
Yeah. Exactly.
We would really like for you to come back when we can do this in person.
Mhm.
Like I said, it's kind of hard to do the little talking heads. We're all used to it, but we miss being able to see people's reactions and their involvement. So if you'll come back when we can meet, we would love to have you speak on another topic.
There is another question.
I'm sorry, what, Sharon?
There is another question.
Okay.
Yeah. Are there any exercise that you
okay.
recommend to help with unconscious biases? Yes, there are a variety of activities that I too use during training um, that I can recommend. There are, and mostly most of my activities are used to kind of put people on the spot, you know, to say, hey, that's how you will react if you're in a situation and such a thing happens. You know, like the form, uh, not to make people feel guilty, but to say, hey, you have biases, as simple as that. Um, yes, there are a few exercises that we can share, and pictures and situations and cultural situations.
Any other
Comment
questions?
there also there for you, doctor.
Yes, I like the snake example. My nephews have snakes, and I force myself to relax them, uh, so I do not get chased. It helps that I know they are not poisonous. Yes, and you know, I have had people in workshops saying, "Well, I don't care whether they are poisonous or not. I don't want to be around snakes. Period." You know, and they're telling me my bias against snakes is gone. Don't even try to prove to me that they are not poisonous. You know, so there are some ingrained biases. I had a police officer in my class at the police academy here, at the regional police academy in North Kansas City, who told me, I know my bias. I decided that I would never issue a citation or ticket to a woman who is driving a van with children in the van. I don't care what she does. I would not issue her a ticket. I would not give her a citation. Well, we argued that, or the officers argued, and he said, don't even try to convince me. I am not going to change my mind. That is who I am. And we told him, well, what about if your commander or chief knows about that? He said, well, if he doesn't like it, he can come and patrol for me. So yeah, uh, some people are very strong with their biases, including with snakes.
Well, thank you again. If anybody would like to get a hold of the doctor, just email me and I can get you his email information. And thank you again to Dr. Kenny Rodriguez, best of luck on April 6th. Even if you can't vote in Grandview, vote. And thank you to our chairman, Patty Carbaugh, and for all of you for being here today. We look forward to getting together with you again next month.